Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video, I'm gonna do a February reading wrap up. So in February, I finished 6 physical books and I also read 3 fanfics. Let's go through them all. I started the month off with my Vampire Academy journey. I read the first book, and kind of what sparked me to start the Vampire Academy series is I have a few friends who have been telling me they would really enjoy this series and kind of have been badgering me to start it. Well, I finally did. So this one is for you guys. You know who I'm talking about. And honestly, I'm really enjoying it. I just have to remind myself that this series was written around like 2008 era, very Twilight-esque. You know, the writing is a little bit different than current times. It's really fun. I'm having a good time with it. And yeah, this is the first book I completed in February. Next, I completed the tandem read of Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms. These are books 6 and 7 of Throne of Glass series. The reason why you do a tandem read for this is they take place simultaneously. So without going into any spoilers, the group splits up for some sort of reason. It kind of covers what the two parties are going through at the same time. The tandem read lets you read it chronologically all together and you kind of go back and forth to it. The first time I had read these 2 books, I didn't do the tandem read, so this is my first time experiencing it. And honestly, it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. It was nice to see how it all blends together. Would I do it again in the future and would I recommend it? I don't know, it kind of depends. I personally wouldn't do it because it does take a lot of time going back and forth between the 2 books and they're quite large. It's a lot of coordination between that. But if you mostly read at home or you have some sort of way of keeping track of it, by all means, go ahead with the tandem read. I still had a good time. I don't think I'd do it again in the future, but I do understand why people decide to do the tandem read the first time you read the Throne of Glass series. Next book I read is the second book in the Vampire Academy series. It is Frostbite. Again, having so much fun, vibing with it. It's just, you know, going along with the motions of the Vampire Academy series and just having so much fun with it all. Next, I read An Honored Vow. This is the last book of the Halfling saga. I loved every minute of this book. I kind of took a break between finishing the 3rd book before starting this one because I just honestly didn't want this book to end. It took me longer to read this than usual because I just didn't want to let go of those characters, you know. This is my first and only time experiencing this. The series and the ending, so I just wanted to hold on to it to as much as possible. I just know in the future I'm very excited to reread it and, you know, pick up on the things I might have not the first time around based on what I know now. But yes, I loved this book so much. Tried to pace myself while reading it because I just loved it so. Next book I read physically is Deep End. I started and ended this book in one day because I was just so consumed by it all. I started reading this book and I was like, you know what? I'm so consumed by it. I need to pull out my tabs. I need to pull out my highlighters because I'm just having so much fun with it. And I did have a lot of fun. This was my 3rd Ali Hazelwood book that I've read. This book I think is turning me into an Ali Hazelwood girly. The first book I read by Ali Hazelwood was Love Hypothesis, and I wouldn't say I was like a hater on it. I think I wasn't in the mood for the book, but also it was her first book that was ever published, so I just didn't really vibe with it at the time. Second book I read was Bride, and I absolutely loved Bride, had such a good time with it for the vibes. Deep End was my 3rd book by her, loved it. It also kind of reminds me about how my husband and I met in university because we were both student athletes as well, so that was like a fun little way to experience the book. I was like, oh my god, our love story is set in a romance novel, so that was really fun. The last physical book that I read in February was the 3rd book in Vampire Academies. I had just finished it this past weekend actually, and it is A Shadow Kiss. It really starts to pick up here. We're getting a lot more into the plot, get into the thick of things. Again, this is a lot thicker than the first 2 books, so very fun time. You can see it's starting to really pick up, especially the ending of this book. If you know, you know. And again, just need to remind myself, This was written in and around like the early 2010s, and if I was a teenager at this time reading it as it was coming out, I would have absolutely loved it. I'm still having a really good time. I feel like I'm reliving my Twilight phase and everything. One of the books that defined me as a reader, if you watch that video of mine. So those are the physical books I've read in February. I read all 3 of the auction books about to be published. It is by Julie Soto. So I started off with The Right Thing to Do. It is the first book of this trilogy series that Julie Soto wrote. It is a Dramione fic. I absolutely loved it. I stayed up till like 2 a.m. reading it, and I regretted it the next day, but it was so worth it. I absolutely loved it. The next book I read is All the Wrong Things, which is basically the same book written from Draco's point of view. Super cool, super interesting. You get more flashbacks in this one, and it was so much fun. Absolutely loved reading the other perspective of the story that I'm already familiar with, but still getting more information, which was really cool. And I loved how she wrote it back and forth with the flashbacks and using some of the same lines, obviously from the first book into it, but to see it in a different light and really appreciate it. Last fanfic I read in February was The Auction, the 3rd book of that trilogy. My goodness, it was amazing. I mainly read it because I know it's about to be traditionally published. It's going to be called Rose in Chains, and I am so excited for it. I am like really diving deep into my Julie Soto area, and I have all her other traditionally published books. I'm trying to read all of her fanfics before I know they're going to be traditionally published or like reinvented, and I'm just having such a good time. If you have ever read Dramione fics and have recommendations, please comment them down below. Getting deep into my Dramione era again. I've done a few of the big ones, and I used to be a big reader back in high school. Please send your recommendations to me down below. If you read any of these books that I mentioned, let me know as well. And thanks for watching my video. Bye!